17 years, everyone believed it was a tragic accident. A young nurse, a lonely Scottish road, a car in flames, and a husband who somehow walked away without a scratch. At her funeral, her brother gripped that husband's hand, thinking they were united in grief. What he didn't know was chilling. He was holding the hand of his sister's murderer. Welcome back to Crime Nest, where we break down real cases with facts, context, and respect for the victims. Never cheap shock value. If you want more in-depth investigations like this, support Crime Nest by watching till the end, hitting like, and sharing this video with someone who follows true crime. In May 1994, 32-year-old nurse Claire Morris was driving with her husband Malcolm Webster on a remote road near Aberdeen in Scotland. According to Malcolm, the car left the road, hit a tree, and burst into flames. Malcolm escaped almost completely uninjured. Claire died trapped in the passenger seat. Police saw a burned-out wreck with a dead woman and an apparently traumatized widower. On paper, it looked like a tragic road accident. In reality, it was the beginning of the unraveling of one of the most calculating murderers Scotland had ever seen. Malcolm John Webster was born in London in 1959. On the surface, he came from a respectable family. His father was a senior detective in the Metropolitan Police Fraud Squad. His mother had been a nurse, but from an early age, Malcolm showed disturbing behavior. He would pretend to faint for attention. He set fires and earned the nickname Pyro. As a teenager, he lied about having cancer, using imaginary illness to pull sympathy and control people. He left school at 15 with no qualifications and drifted through jobs: nurse, bin man, driver, office clerk. His favorite saying summed him up: "Why work hard yourself when someone could be doing it for you?" That wasn't just laziness. It was a glimpse of how far he was willing to let others pay the price for his comfort. In 1989, Malcolm worked on a children's ward at a hospital in Abu Dhabi. Within 6 months, 3 children under 6 died of cardiac failure under his care, something extremely rare in kids that young. A colleague later claimed that staff discovered Malcolm injecting himself with insulin and suspected he had used insulin on the children. But there wasn't enough hard evidence for a criminal case, and it's alleged that his father used his influence to quietly get Malcolm out of the country. No charges, no trial. If the suspicions were right, this was his first lethal experiment, and he walked away untouched. Back in the UK, Malcolm worked at Aberdeen Royal Infirmary, where he met nurse Claire Morris. Claire was clever, kind, and close to her family. Her brother Peter thought Malcolm seemed cheeky and charming. Claire fell in love quickly. Her mother, Betty, did not. She felt something was off about Malcolm, something hidden behind the jokes and easy smile. On 3rd September 1993, Malcolm and Claire married. Within months, Claire's health began to collapse. She felt exhausted. She couldn't concentrate. She became dependent on Malcolm for basic daily functioning. She didn't know that her own husband was drugging her with temazepam, a sedative. The day before she died, she told a friend, "I'm not right, I'm tired and I can't concentrate." Meanwhile, Malcolm was quietly preparing. He had already driven their car into a ditch in what looked suspiciously like a practice run. On 27th of May 1994, just 8 months after the wedding, Malcolm put his plan into action. He drugged Claire until she was unconscious, drove her to a remote stretch of road, parked near a tree, and set the car on fire with her still inside. An off-duty police officer came across the burning vehicle and tried to help. Malcolm insisted, more than once, that there was nobody else in the car. Moments later, the car exploded. Claire burned to death in the passenger seat. At the hospital, Malcolm's vital signs were completely normal. No head injury, no internal trauma, no broken bones. Yet at the funeral, he wore a neck brace and played the role of the grieving, physically injured widower. Peter, Claire's brother, remembered squeezing Malcolm's hand as they both cried. For nearly 2 decades, he believed they shared the same pain. Only later would he realize, in reality, I was holding the hand of her murderer. Even at the time, parts of the accident didn't make sense. There were no skid marks on the road. There was no crash damage consistent with a high-speed impact. The car appeared to have been stopped or moving slowly when it burned. A firefighter at the scene said the whole situation felt a bit hooky, off, wrong, staged. Claire's friend Leslie also had doubts. When she went to the couple's cottage after the crash, she found epilepsy medication on the table. Neither Claire nor Malcolm had epilepsy. She told police she was suspicious. They dismissed her concerns. One officer quietly looked into the case in his own time. but officially, Claire's death was ruled an accident. Malcolm collected more than $200,000 in insurance payouts, bought a Land Rover, a yacht, and showered money on other women. Within 6 months, the money was gone. For 17 years, it looked like he had pulled off the perfect murder. In 1996, while working in Saudi Arabia, Malcolm met oncology nurse Felicity Drum from New Zealand. She saw him as charming, attentive, and funny. They married in 1997 and honeymooned at Cook's Beach in New Zealand. On the very first night, Malcolm made her a cup of tea. Felicity later testified that she then slept for 36 hours straight with no explanation. During the honeymoon and the marriage that followed, she repeatedly experienced double vision, feeling drunk and unsteady, bitter, strange-tasting food, dangerous liver test results. Malcolm was slowly drugging her, even while she was pregnant with their son, Edward. After Malcolm finally left, Edward's severe eczema cleared within weeks, suggesting he too had been affected by whatever his mother was being given. While with Felicity, Malcolm's pattern escalated. 3 suspicious house fires in Scotland and New Zealand. Malcolm quietly added his name to her bank accounts. Around 140,000 New Zealand dollars of her savings simply disappeared. He claimed he had cancer and heart problems. Again, all lies. Then came the financial bombshell. Malcolm had secretly taken out 9 life insurance policies on Felicity, worth about $750,000. The deadline to pay for a house they were buying in Auckland was February 12, 1999. Malcolm kept making excuses about why his money from Scotland hadn't arrived. That morning, he suggested they go to the bank. Felicity drove, Malcolm at the wheel of her Honda. Suddenly, he claimed there was something wrong with the steering. The car crossed 2 lanes at speed, heading toward a power pole. Felicity grabbed the wheel. It worked perfectly. The car ended up in a ditch. Malcolm jumped out and rushed to the boot, where Felicity later saw newspapers and petrol. Perfect materials for a staged fire. He screamed at her to stay in the car. She refused, got out, and called her lawyer instead. At the hospital, Malcolm faked a heart attack, then used the chaos to drain their joint account. A week later, Malcolm tried again. He took Felicity on a drive to a rural area north of Auckland. She drank from a water bottle in the car. The next thing she remembered was waking up in the passenger seat in a forest when her phone rang. That phone call probably saved her life. When Malcolm returned to the car and found her awake, he exploded. "What the hell are you doing awake?" Police later found petrol, wood, and newspapers in the boot. Felicity's father uncovered the forged insurance policies in Malcolm's files. Confronted with evidence, Malcolm's response to Felicity was chilling. "You would have died happy." Felicity went to the police. Hair tests proved she'd been repeatedly drugged, even during pregnancy. Before New Zealand authorities could arrest him, Malcolm fled. He left Felicity with only about $12 in her account. 4 arrest warrants were eventually issued for arson, drugging, and disabling a victim. Back in the UK, Malcolm's pattern continued. In 2002, he began a relationship with Christina Willis. He borrowed money, burned a computer hard drive in her garden, convinced her to make a will, and gave himself power of attorney. There's no evidence he tried to murder Christina, but many believe he moved on only because he found a wealthier target. That target was Simone Banerjee, a 41-year-old NHS manager from Oban, Scotland. Simone was independently wealthy. She owned property, shares, and half of a large yacht. Malcolm told her he had terminal leukemia, shaved his head, and pretended to undergo chemotherapy. She changed her will to leave almost everything to him. Together, they planned a transatlantic sailing honeymoon, Canary Islands to the Caribbean. Police later believed he intended to stage a boating accident and drown her at sea. After his conviction, Simone discovered her life jacket had been tampered with and its foil punctured. Everyone else's life jacket was fine. If you appreciate deep dive cases that trace the patterns, the psychology, and the paper trail, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to CrimeNest. Your support helps CrimeNest keep telling these stories with the care and detail they deserve, and it really does make a difference to how far these videos travel. In 2006, Malcolm was treasurer of a local angling club in Oban. About $4,000 went missing, and an embezzlement investigation put him on the radar of Detective Inspector Charles Henry. At first, D.I. Henry was just looking at a suspected financial cheat with a dodgy expense trail and missing club funds. But as he started digging, a pattern emerged. Malcolm Webster always seemed to be in the middle of some kind of drama. Lost money, fires, illnesses, chaos that somehow always benefited him. Meanwhile, in New Zealand, Felicity's sister, Jane Drum, was working in domestic violence support. She had seen controlling, manipulative men before, but Malcolm Webster was in a league of his own. At a police conference in Britain, she casually mentioned her sister's strange car accident to officers, how Felicity had blacked out, how the car ended up in a ditch, how there was petrol and newspapers in the boot, and how it all seemed eerily similar to the crash that had killed Malcolm's first wife back in Scotland. 2 car crashes, 11,000 miles apart, 5 years apart. Same man at the center, same pattern, drugs, insurance, a staged scene, and a supposedly devastated husband. That coincidence was too big to ignore. Jane didn't just hint at her concerns. She pushed. She demanded action. She knew that if police treated each woman's experience in isolation, Malcolm would slip through the cracks again. That one conversation at a conference, almost a throwaway moment, lit the fuse on what would become a massive international investigation. Back in Scotland, D.I. Henry started joining the dots. Police searched Simone's house and found a stolen laptop and an unlicensed gun. They uncovered the planned transatlantic voyage, the altered will, the forged documents, and the fact that Simone's life insurance heavily favored Malcolm. The picture was no longer just dodgy treasurer. It was potentially lethal predator with a history of suspicious accidents and a very rich fiancée about to sail into the middle of nowhere with him. D.I. Henry realized Simone was in real, immediate danger. In January 2008, police delivered an Osmond warning to Simone, an official notice in the UK that your life could be at risk from a specific person. It's basically the police saying, we can't arrest them yet, but we have enough concern to warn you. You may be a target. That letter also revealed something Simone had never been told. Malcolm already had a wife and son in New Zealand. Simone confronted him. She later said he went completely white and unusually quiet. For a man who'd spent his life talking, lying, explaining, spinning stories, that silence said everything. The mask was slipping, and for the first time, the people around him could see the danger beneath the charm. In 2008, Scottish police reopened Claire Morris's case under the codename Operation Field. What had been dismissed as a tragic crash was now treated as a likely premeditated murder and part of a wider pattern. A preserved fragment of Claire's liver from 1994 was retested using a new dewaxing technique, revealing a 92.4% probability of temazepam, a sedative she'd never been prescribed, but Malcolm had access to. Combined with her exhaustion and confusion before the crash, this strongly suggested she'd been drugged. That single piece of forensic proof turned suspicion into a solid murder theory and triggered a massive investigation. 5 years of work, over 1,000 witnesses, 1,200 exhibits, 90 warrants, and cooperation across 6 countries, the FBI and New Zealand police. Detectives rebuilt decades of fires, crashes, and fraud. This was no longer a one-off tragedy, but an international hunt for a serial predator who used relationships, hospitals, and fake illnesses as cover for his crimes. On 1st February 2011, Malcolm Webster went on trial at the High Court in Glasgow in what became the longest single-accused criminal trial in Scottish history, lasting 16 weeks. Forensic experts showed Claire's crash had been staged. Fire specialists explained how petrol and newspapers created the blaze, and toxicologists linked temazepam in Claire's liver to deliberate drugging. Felicity described the drugging and staged crashes. Peter Morris relived the funeral and Malcolm's fake injuries, and witnesses from the UK and New Zealand outlined the same pattern. Lies about illness, disappearing money, fires, accidents, and large life insurance policies, with Webster always at the center. The defense admitted he was a liar and a thief, but claimed that didn't make him a killer. The jury disagreed. After less than 4 hours, they found him guilty of murdering Claire Morris, attempting to murder Felicity Drum and Simone Banerjee, and multiple counts of fraud, theft, arson, drugging, and attempted bigamy. On 5th of July 2011, he was sentenced to life with a minimum of 30 years. The judge called him cold-blooded, driven by utterly base motives, and a serious danger to women. All his appeals failed, and by 2016, his legal options were exhausted. He is still in prison and won't be eligible for parole until 2041, when he'll be 82. yet he continues to claim he's innocent. Claire's family had her headstone changed, removing any mention of Malcolm Webster and preventing him from ever being buried beside her. For them, the trial was about reclaiming Claire's story from the man who tried to pass her murder off as an accident. Her brother Peter spent years campaigning, speaking to the media, and working with investigators to expose the truth about that night in 1994, before his death in 2019 at 56. Felicity had to rebuild her life in New Zealand, carrying the trauma and financial ruin of discovering the father of her child had tried to kill her twice and treated her as nothing more than a payout. Simone had to accept that the dying man she planned to marry was neither ill nor honest, and may have intended her to vanish at sea. Finding her tampered life jacket, while everyone else's was intact, turned a planned romantic voyage into something far darker. Malcolm Webster has been described as a narcissist and a sociopath who hunted wealthy women, drugged them, set fires, and staged crashes to cash in their life insurance. He didn't rely on brute force, he weaponized trust. Claire Morris was 32 when she died, a nurse, a daughter, a sister. She deserved more than 8 months of marriage to a man who saw her as a payout. She deserved an ordinary full life. Instead, it was stolen in a fire staged to look like fate, when it was really someone's plan. At the center of this story is a disturbing truth. Some predators don't just rely on violence. They rely on trust, on our instinct to believe a smiling face, a tragic story, or a tearful performance. Malcolm Webster turned illness, grief, and even love into weapons. He faked cancer, invented heart problems, shaved his head and pretended to have chemotherapy, wore neck braces he didn't need, and played the part of the devastated widower so convincingly that even experienced police officers were initially taken in. He fooled colleagues, friends, and families for years. But in the end, it wasn't a dramatic confession or a single smoking gun that exposed him. It was patterns, repeated accidents, repeated lies, the same script played out in different countries with different women, and it was people speaking up. Felicity going to the police, Jane raising the alarm at that conference, Simone listening when officers warned her that something was very wrong. If you want more deep dive cases like this, where we follow the forensics, the financial trail, and the human cost, make sure you're subscribed to CrimNest and have notifications turned on so you don't miss the next episode. Drop a comment below. Which red flag in this case stood out the most to you? Was it the sudden illnesses, the missing money, the repeated accidents? And what should friends, families, or authorities do when coincidences start to repeat around the same person? Do we need to be braver about trusting our instincts when something feels off, even if the person in front of us seems charming, clever, or respectable? Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting CrimNest. And as always, stay safe, stay curious, and take care of each other. Thinking.